WBS that I created in software called OpenProj, but I also showed you another one in Microsoft Word. So deciding that I want to use this or that, that's your approach. That was for plan scope management, to decide if I should use a tool or not, if we should use Excel for requirements documentation or not. So the decisions you make about the approach and the ground rules that you want to use, or what if we have to make a change, who will baseline, all the terms and conditions or ground rules that you want to apply for your approach, those are the ones that you see in the beginning. It says plan scope management, and here I'll show you why we have plan schedule management. But beyond this, this is where we will identify the activities. When you identify them, you use decomposition from the WBS. You just break down the WBS into its activities, and don't be worried. You don't have to be technical because you're not the one who has to do it. You ask the team lead who you've assigned that WBS task to go and figure out the activities with their own teams. They know what they're doing. It's their specialty. It's not yours. Your specialty has to be project management. And then once you identify the activities, you can connect them in the right order, which one has to happen first, which one is next. And even when you have activities coming, hey, my hands are like WBS packages, right? And the fingers are the activities. Sometimes you'll find that one finger here is going to connect, or maybe needs to finish before another activity here on a different WBS needs to happen. So I will take information from the team lead here and then the team lead here, and then I will connect the activities in the proper order, so then I can stay on top of it, right? So we will define the activities, we will sequence them, we will estimate how long they will take, we will finalize our schedule, and then we just need to keep an eye on the schedule. So it is just back-to-back sequential, technical. It is related to creating schedules. However, there will be lots of new words to add. So if words worry you, then put on your helmet or something, because there's going to be additional terminology that we throw in. Lots of new terminology. Things that you will notice, things you need to know about different ways that we do scheduling. Here on this screen, it shows you that the top bullet that you see there, this is referring to Agile. And you see it says this is a form of rolling wave planning based on adaptive life cycles. And if you recall, adaptive is another word for Agile. Iterative scheduling with a backlog. Agile always works with a backlog of features or requirements that they want to complete. And the goal is that they will, package them into sprints, do them, and then reprioritize the remaining backlog, pick whatever they can do in 2 weeks, put them in another sprint, complete it with frequent reviews like that. So it's like rolling wave, because at the end of every sprint, they have better clarity. And now that gives them more insight to be able to assess going forward. So that's called iterative scheduling using a backlog, and that's what Agile is. There's also on-demand scheduling. And in on-demand scheduling, they have a pile of work, a stack of work, and whoever is free will work on the next one. Okay, this is not necessarily what we do in project management, although it can be used in some places in your project where you have something repetitive. And you see here the concept is that the team pulls work from a backlog as resources become available. Right? And then the third item there, adaptive approaches, that's almost the same as what we were mentioning at the top, iterative scheduling with a backlog. You're using short cycles to undertake work, review the results, and adapt as necessary. That's the definition of adaptive. That's the definition of Agile. It goes the same with the item that you see on the top there. So PMI in PIM Book 6 refocused heavily on the concept of Agile, and you're going to find that in 2021 that Agile is going to be a lot more important. So if you're not too much into Agile, then get your certification now, this year. If you wait till next year, you will need to know quite a bit about Agile. Okay, Agile is going to be a lot more prominent next year. So get your certification this year. Try as hard as you can to get it this year. The Agile flavor is minimal on the exam. Next year, it's going to be prominent and the structure is going to be different. Moving forward, let's get started with the schedule management part. Plan schedule management here is just for the approach. So I like to read it backwards and I would say, or maybe add a word. I wish they would add a word. Plan schedule management, add a word here that says approach. Plan schedule management approach. That would have been a much better way to describe this, because a lot of people read plan schedule management and they're thinking it's the schedule plan and they get it all confused. So this is your schedule management approach. And here you're coming up with the policies, you're coming up with the procedures, documentation for how you want to plan, how you want to develop, manage, and execute and control the whole project schedule. So how will you be managing the project schedule? I can assure you, we don't manage the schedule the same way, all right? Some are using Excel, some don't use any schedules, some use this software here. That's not me. I like to use software. I'm not a software geek, and that's probably my weakest area is software. But MS Project or the one that I showed you yesterday, OpenProj, they're very easy to use if you just get your hand on it, and you'll see that you can pick it up. It's not, and then there's a lot of online videos on YouTube that you can watch for a few minutes, and it shows you what you need to do. So I'm a big fan of using tools if they're available, but learning complicated ones sometimes it's not my thing. All right, but Excel, unless you're doing a very, very small project, it's a bit tough to actually manage with Excel, because Excel, yes, it can give you a list, you can put durations, but it's really hard to build in the dynamic changes. So I cannot, if one gets extended, one activity, I cannot see the impact on the rest unless I manually go change them, or unless I want to build in macros or something. There are creative people who can do it, and I can assure you Excel is a huge software, because once I ordered the book, I don't have it here, but it's, this is my head, right? The book is this thick. If you can see, it's this thick. It's half the size of my head. Or 1/3, I guess my head is bigger. But 1/3, it has a lot of information. I read the first chapter and I learned a lot. I gave up after that. I was like, I don't need to know that much about Excel. But you could do a lot with Excel if you want to do programming in it, and if you want to use macros, you can. But how many people really do that? So if you're going to be doing scheduling for a project, or going to be reviewing schedules for a project, I think it's best to have some sort of software intended for scheduling. And there's also web-based solutions out there. It doesn't have to be Primavera or MS Project or any of these. There's some web tools that are really colorful. So your organization should get into that. So let's take a look at what is in planning your schedule management. Again, this is planning your schedule management approach. And you see here that you come up with your, your schedule management plan as an output. And there are many things that you consider. See the tools and techniques. If I now show you, I don't know if I have them on the screen because it looks like I've already put some information here. These are similar to plan scope management. If I go back to plan scope management, it is the same exact tools and techniques, because what you're doing is you're assessing your environment and the tools available to you, and you're looking at what are the options and determining, okay, what should I use, right? Should I use Excel? Should I use MS Project? What do I want to go with as my schedule tool? But the schedule tool is just one thing. Let's take a look at what else goes into a schedule management plan. Things such as, well, the first one is the tool, okay? The schedule model development is the tool, and not just that, the iteration. So the model may also include whether you want to use agile or sprints and so on. That could be part of it. But it's also mentioned here, release and iteration length. If you're doing predictive or waterfall, you're planning the whole thing. And if you decide to use MS Project, then you could say that that's how you're going to develop the schedule. So the first bullet may be talking about the tool, the schedule model development, and then, or maybe even what you will now learn, which is critical path, finish to start and start to start, things like that, how we create the actual schedule. That's what they're referring to in the beginning there. And then the release and iteration length is whether you want to go with sprints. The level of accuracy is how, obviously it's clear, but some create draft schedules and eventually enhance them. The unit of measure, you want to know if your schedules are read in days, months, weeks. Very, very lengthy projects could actually be scheduled in weeks or months if you want, but most of the time we're using days. In IT, sometimes they try to use hours, but I think only in Excel. They will not, they typically would not use software for that. Organizational procedures links, some have ERPs in the organization and have some other software tools or organizational system databases. And sometimes your software that you're using for scheduling is linked to another database inside the organization. And when you apply a resource, it will mark them as already allocated now on this one project. So there's a linkage between the system that I use for scheduling and the other system inside the organization from HR maybe. So if there are procedural links there or other process related things that we need to consider, then that's something you need to consider when you're planning for scheduling. And then the project schedule model maintenance talks about how often I'm going to be updating this. I like to update whenever something significant happens. On a 1.5-year project, I think if I update every week, every 2 weeks, it's fine. I like every week. I'm a very restless person, so I always recommend to people to not go too long without updating, because you don't want to be questioned as the PM as to what happened at the site or with the software or with the test or with the process. Depends what your project is. I don't want to be in a position where I look weak, So anything that I'm capable of doing, I try to do. And maintenance, which means updating, not construction, it's updating your schedule to make sure you have correct hours or correct, doesn't even have to be correct hours, that certain things get completed as planned, Don't let it wait, it mushrooms into a bigger problem. And speaking of problems, the control thresholds is how big of a problem do you need to foresee or forecast before you escalate the problem to your management. Not escalate before you let them know. A lot of times we're waiting, we don't really given up. We don't say things are bad until they've really blown up in our face. And so you may want to set a threshold with your team or with your management that says, if we think we're going to be 1 month or more behind, we need to let management know before it actually happens. This is if we think, not when we are already late. Okay. For me, if you think your work is going to be significantly impacted, let's say I only gave you a 5-day task, right? I may want to set rules that if you ever think that your work is going to be delayed by, I think for everybody it's different, right? If you have a 5-day task, if you think you're going to be delayed by a day, even a day, I want to know. The reason is I may have a depending activity that a contractor is doing that's waiting for you to finish. So if you're late, the contractor is going to show up as planned if we already agreed with them and you haven't finished. So I really want to know. But this usually happens on a smaller project when I'm talking about days. On a larger project, let's say oil and gas, installation, that, maybe you can talk about a month. If you think you're going to be 1 month late, then let us know, because we may have to arrange for other things. So these are the control thresholds, the notification point. Rules of performance management, performance measurement. You could just go by variance from the original schedule, but we also will learn later on about earned value, and I'll show you how to use CPI and SPI, the magic words that make you sound like a real professional. I'll show you those. You also need to discuss how we will be reporting on the schedule. Notice that in all of what we discussed so far, we actually did not discuss anything. We did not create the schedule. And the schedule management plan is simply just the approach that we want to use in working with our schedule. You should do that with the team, with the management, just to make sure that you're all on the same ground, same page before you move, before you move forward with actual scheduling. All right. So if you've laid the ground rules and everybody knows how you're going to be working and which software you're going to use and so on, or Excel, if that works for you, then you can start creating your schedule. And the first thing that we do here is we define the activities that will be on my schedule, the activities that will be on my project. And that happens from the WBS. So we're going to be using decomposition that you see here in tools and techniques. This is where work packages will be broken down into activities. That's all there is here. And the outputs will be the list of your activities, the details about these activities, milestones that are relevant to us, and maybe if we realize that we made a mistake, then we can make some changes. I will detail these a little bit, so don't panic. Here you'll see the term rolling wave planning showing again, and it's an iterative planning technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term, so that's the wave that is hitting you, is planned in detail, while work further in the future is planned at a high level. Those are the ripples in the water that you see in the ocean, right? So as every wave gets closer, we detail it, right? Let me see here if I have any more details or if I should open my scribble pad. All right, so before I start scribbling things, I also want to show you here how it works. This is decomposition. Let me get rid of the drawings. Over here, you see this, that's a WBS. You see this one, that's a WBS. These are WBS packages, all right? And then underneath them, below every one of these, you will see several activities right there. So these are the activities. So you've taken a WBS and you have decomposed it into its activities. And you won't see the name, but test project manager ed. So I'm just creating a new test project, and I'm going to show you what we do for defining the activities. It says it's forward schedule. This is the software tool called OpenProj. And so it's just going to create a new similar to MS Project tool for me. Oh, I need to use the mouse. Okay. So now it gave me this tool. If you remember, I used it yesterday. And I'm going to put the whole, should we do the move? Let's say office move. This is the office move project. And underneath that, I'm going to do the construction part, right? And then we did WBS, so let's think about the pieces that go into an office move project. There's construction, and then there's the IT part, and then there's the furniture, and then there's the actual move that needs to happen, and then there's the administrative stuff, you know, security, safety, things like that. And then we can throw in several activities. So what I created were potential WBSs. If you're wondering why I left spaces, it's because I just want to put activities in there. So for construction, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to keep it very, very simple. And I'm not although I built a house in Massachusetts, I didn't really do it. I managed a project. I'm not going to claim that I have lots of experience. I'm just going to throw a couple of things. If we were moving someplace, I'm just going to say prep walls and floor. And then I'm going to say install cubicles. Okay. So I'm just going to do this. And some will have to happen before the others. So eventually you'll have to put the connection between them. And you know IT, so I'm just going to say setup, networking, and I don't know, connect all devices. And in furniture, I'm going to say order, not order. I'm going to say prepare. I don't know, we're moving our furniture maybe, right? So if we're moving our furniture, I'm going to say wrap and pack, and then unwrap and unpack, I guess. For the move, I'm going to say load stuff, unload stuff. How about that? But we also need to find a mover. And administrative, something here, and then something there. I don't know what's there. I can't really think this fast. So I'm just going to put a few things. I'm going to take the whole of this, just showing you how simple it can be, and then push them out. So now the office project is the parent, and these are children. And then I push these out so I can make each larger piece a WBS. Obviously, you can have a lot more than 2 activities, but I'm just keeping it simple. Like that. And so the WBS view that we talked about before, you can shrink these and then go to the WBS view. And here you have the office move project. It has components like construction, IT, furniture, move, and administrative. So it's easy to view a project like this. And now when you want to go and schedule it, you don't connect. You can't really connect these pieces together. But what you can connect are the activities in them, right? Now, I'm not going to spend time figuring out which one is first, which one is next, but every one of these activities needs to be identified. There could be even more that happens here in the construction. For example, prepare pantry, so that could be another one there that needs to be done. But the identification of these activities is really not my responsibility. These things here, they're not really my responsibility as the PM. It is the responsibility of each respective team that is responsible for this, all right? Whoever is responsible for the construction is probably going to be outsourced. In the WBS, we could also determine that this one work package that's going to be outsourced, they will tell us. I'm not going to kill myself trying to figure out what construction work needs to happen. They will give me a proposal for the work. I'll go to the site, I'll check it with them, and if it makes sense, fine. If it doesn't, I'm going to ask questions. I'll take maintenance with me. They'll help me with this. Remember the charter. Maintenance is going to be one of my key stakeholders in there because they would know a lot more than me about this. But I'm the one who's driving it. Maintenance doesn't know how to drive a project. I drive the project. Okay? It's like somebody that knows the way and you know how to drive. You have a permit to drive. So I'm the one who has the permit to drive this project. They're the ones who are technical. I will tap into their expertise and we will develop these activities. That, development of the activities is what we call decomposition also. And we define these activities. Now, besides the activities, there are milestones, okay? So let me get back to the mouse. Okay, so I'm going to insert an activity here, right? Which is I'm putting it under connect all devices. I want to do IT testing complete, okay? And what this is going to stand for is a milestone. I want you to take a look at the right, on the right-hand side. You see these are all, if I zoom in, you see these are all bar charts, okay? There are bars that we can connect, and you can connect these activities and put a duration for them. So if these are gonna take 5 days, 7 days, I want you to, let me zoom out again, now that I put some durations. You can see that there are bars on the right. You can see all of these down here are potentially going to become bars, the ones in blue. But IT testing complete, this is not an activity, and it's not something that takes time. Instead, this is something that is a notification mainly for management. but connect all devices, set up networking. Maybe I need 7 days for this, I need 3 days for that. But IT testing complete more like notification, so it's 0 days. Okay, these are called milestones, and I want you, before I hit the enter button, I want you to look to the right side where we had the blue bar, and I hit enter, and what happened? It changed to a diamond. Okay, a diamond represents a milestone. Even in human life, a diamond could be an engagement thing, it's a milestone in our life. But on a project, the diamond is the milestone, and it represents no duration, but it is more of a notification. Most of the time, your managers don't want all the fine details. All they want is the milestones. Did you start the construction? Did you finish the testing? Have you found the mover? So even here, I'm going to add one on the move. Arranged mover. So for arranging mover, management just wants to know that you did that. It's just a 0 duration item. It's a notification. So we identify all the activities, we identify the milestones, and we also identify details about them. See, wrap and pack furniture, right? For you to wrap and pack the furniture, you will need tools, correct? You cannot really do this if you don't have tools. You cannot do it if you don't have resources. So the expectation is that for every one of these activities, we need to figure out if we need any kind of resources, especially this one. We will need boxes and tape and I don't know what. And for networking, they may need, some, I don't know, it's been a long time since IT. But to prep the wall, install cubicles, prepare the pantry, there'll be some tools, a ladder, a brush for the walls to paint it, and so on. You need things. And those tools are the ones that we identify here. We identify activities, we identify the attributes. The attributes are the tools, okay? These are the things: activity description, resource requirements. Okay, so in the resource requirement, that may mean tools, it may mean equipment, it may mean people, specialty, experience, software, whatever it is. But every activity will have attributes, means descriptive items about every activity. It will have an ID. I don't use IDs in mine. But it could have an ID that is tied to the WBS. It will have a name for sure. I want to show you here. Even though I will put construction, I can put construction in the WBS, but when I go into the activities, I use a verb noun. So you put do this, do that. So in admin, it should not really say something here because I just left it generic. It should be more like do something here and do something there. Usually activities have that style of writing. Load stuff, unload stuff, wrap, unwrap. IT testing complete because it's a milestone, it's okay. But the other ones, they will say set up networking, connect all devices. WBS can just be a basket, just says IT work, for example. Furniture related work, moving related work. So hopefully these things make sense. Hopefully I'm adding a bit of practicality to the exam prep course. So this is what we do. We identify activities, we identify the details about them, and required resources, so that when we get to the point where we actually have to work on it, we are ready to do it. Saying that I want to paint a wall without buying the brush or arranging for the painters, it's not going to happen. You have to have everything else. So along with the activities that were seen before, activity list, you'll see we have the attributes, we have the milestone list, the important notification items for management. And for milestones, you have minor milestones and you have major milestones. Major milestones are really for management, minor milestones are for us. So you can have different levels of milestones. I have no way of marking it as minor or major on the tool, but some things are for us, some things are for management. We let them know that something significant is complete, like the site is ready, we can do the move, things like that. Now, a lot of times you'll notice that when you are defining activities, you realize that some things are missed, and so you add them. Just like when I was using the software, I figured, maybe for the construction, maybe they need the permit, right? So issue permit. So then at that point, I will make a change, or we will agree on the terms with the contractor of who will do this, who will not. And maybe we realize that we never really discussed the plumbing in the pantry, but maybe it doesn't have the connections, or maybe we realize that we never talked about the electrical outlets, how they're going to be laid out in the new office. So then you add those in there, and that usually would end up being a change request. So this is why you see on the screen, you see that change request is also one of the outputs. Take things back into perspective. You see it here, the outputs on the bottom left, activity list, the attributes, the milestone list, and the change request. That's what you can expect when you define the activities. Once you define the activities, the next logical thing that you will do is you'll sequence them, which you've seen me do. I added dates. Typically, the dates you leave them till later. Put the sequencing, like which one should happen first, which one should happen next. And you can talk to the specialists themselves who are doing the work and ask them which one happens first, which one happens next. I don't need to be a specialist. And I know you have fears of, I'm not a specialist, I don't know, and they could just lie to me, and they could just give me durations that don't make sense, or tell me that this really has to wait for that. True, they can do that. But in reality, if you are working with contractors, they could deceive you for their financial gain. I get that. But for expertise purposes, most of the time, contractors want to show off that they're experts. They're not going to give you a sense that we're not experts. Employees, on the other hand, are not obligated. So they will push you off. They'll be like, I'm busy, I can't, I don't have time, and you figure it out. But contractors typically want to show off their expertise. So I wouldn't really have that much of a fear that they will not give me good information. I would have fear of them dragging the work for durations. So for now, for sequencing activities, I'm not as worried. They would tell me that something needs to happen first and something else happens later. But you're always free to ask why, explain to me. So you can use whatever style you like, but they can explain to you why something happens first and why the other is dependent on it. Now, the importance of this is that if I put everything back to back on a schedule, that project's going to take a very long time. So look at these activities that I have here on the screen. If everything is going to be back to back, that means this will never happen that you see on the right. I don't know if you can see my mouse as I move it, but here, if everything has to happen back to back, then this relationship has to go. It means I will never have anything that happens without it being back to back. So everything will have to, okay. So everything is going to look like this. I'm going to remove this. It's going to look like that. And I'm going to remove this. Mind you, just because they're stacked up on top of each other doesn't mean they have to happen in that specific order. They could just jump from here. You could jump from here to here, and then from here to here, and so on. Okay, so you can jump as needed depending on the relationship between the specific activities. So the people involved would have to tell you which ones they are dependent on, and then you will make the connections and you'll end up with a schedule. But you'll notice that just look at these that I don't know if you can see the mouse, but the ones on the right-hand side that I'm clicking, those are back to back. But if I change the relationship by clicking on it, see this says finish to start. But if I went and changed it to start, meaning once the first one starts, the second one can start, and I hit OK, notice what happened to them. They overlap. That means when this first one starts, the other one can now start. It will not start if the first one doesn't start. So let's say I pushed the start date for the first one out. You see the other one also moves with it. It cannot start until the first one starts. It has a dependency on the first one to start. But the fact that it can do start to start allows it to run almost at the same time, which is different than when you have it as finish to start, because now in finish to start, it would have to wait. And that will take longer for the project to complete. So these dependencies need to be figured out so that you can properly develop your schedule. All right. And for you to figure these out, you have to sit with the people involved and ask them to tell you what is the dependency between them. And the dependency is what we're looking at in tools and techniques down here, the dependency determination and integration. You're going to integrate from a contractor, from another team, their own activities, which is the question you were asking me before. I can take from different teams and I will connect the activities together. And there's a few terms you're going to be learning today, this morning. All right. So the terms that you want to learn are the following. We are going to learn PDM, precedence diagramming method. The precedence diagramming method is what you see down here. This is a process of diagramming where each connection, the arrow there, depends on something that precedes it. So this is a precedence diagramming. So something precedes the other. And so it's called precedence diagramming. Or if you want to learn the word, it's PDM that will show up on the exam. It is also called the activity on node because the activity A is on the node that you see here, which is the box. That's what they mean. A long time ago, they had something called activity on arrow, where the box was the connection and the arrow was the activity. And the longer it was, the longer the duration. But now we use the arrow for connection. So basically, every one of these boxes that you see is an activity. And likewise, on my schedule, every one of these that you saw, every one of these bars that you saw here, the ones I'm showing you here, these are all activities. But when we're first starting, notice what they look like. They all look the same. And all we had to do was sequence them and determine which one happens first or next. And I wouldn't really have something dragging out like this while I'm trying to connect them. I can have them stacked up like this one here and just do the connections between them and then figure out how long they take. That's how PMI is suggesting that we do it. First, figure out the connections between them, then figure out how long each is going to take. So we will be learning the PDM, precedence diagramming method, which is what you see down here on this screen. And this one depends on 4 types of relationship. The first one here is the common one, which is finish to start, where it means that one activity has to finish before the other one starts. So you see here, this is the finish part, and this is the start part of the other activity. So it's saying activity A has to finish before activity B can start. So if the activity A was 4 days and activity B was 5 days, you will need 9 days to complete them. Now, sometimes we don't have that kind of dependency. Now, most activities will be like that, but you could have situations where something can start and the other one can also start, not at the same time exactly, but it's waiting for it to start so it can start. And I'll give you an example. Imagine if I was painting the new offices that we're moving into. And let's say I want it, and it's a big office, several floors, and we want to paint 2 coats of paint, okay? We want to paint it once and then twice. And let's say it takes 3 days for each time. Or let's make it simple, 5 days, round numbers. It takes 5 days to paint it the first time, the whole office and corners and everything and ceiling. And then we want to paint it one more time, so it will take another 5 days. So if we use the finish to start, then we will need 10 days. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you these directly. Let's say the first one here in construction, I'm just going to say paint first coat. I'm just damaging this schedule, okay? And the second one is paint second coat, okay? So for paint first coat, I need 5 days. For the second one, I need 5 days. And let's say this was the whole project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these. This is my whole project. How long will the project take? It tells you right there, it takes 10 days. Do you see it? I think you do. All right, so it takes 10 days. This is because we're doing finish to start. What if I decided that, you know what, I'm going to paint the first coat in 5 days, but the second coat really doesn't need for the whole first coat to finish, but instead let them start 1 day later so that the paint will already be dry in some place where you started. So you start in one place, one corner. By next day, you would have finished a major space and you would go to the next block of paint that you need to do. Then the other group goes to where you started yesterday and it will be dry by then. They will start their second coat. So I'm going to say, once you start, I will start 1 day later. The second group will start 1 day later. So I'm going to change this relationship to start with a 1 day lag. So that's what it's called. 1 day later, I will start after you start. If you don't start the first coat, 1 day later, I cannot start because I will be the first coat in that case. So this is, you start, 1 day later, I will start, and you will see that the schedule will finish in 6 days. Okay, because now we overlap them with a difference of 1 day. You will finish before me, 1 day later I would finish. Okay, so this is the start to start example, and notice the arrow, how it looks here. It comes out from the left. All right, you see it coming here. Draw. Okay, over here on the left here, you see it's coming out from one activity and it's going into another activity because the left side of the bar is the start and the right side here of the bar is the finish part of it. Okay, so this is how we use start to start. There's also finish to finish. The drawings. So finish to finish is another one. Get back to this. So we did start to start, okay? That's the one that we did right here. So finish to finish is almost the same as start to start, except it's on the other side. In finish to finish, you're saying activity B down here can only finish when activity A is finished. And you're waiting for the other person to finish. I'm going to change the relationship that you see here in this open project, and I'm going to change it to finish. Okay, and let's say it needs 1 extra day to finalize his report. Then this is what it looks like. So this will be, I don't know, work report. Okay, and this will be paint all walls. Okay, whatever, you can imagine it, right? So you see, it will still finish in 6 days because he can start anytime. You can see it right there that he is able to start. He's able to start anytime. I'm able to start anytime, but he has an arrow coming from my side to his side that suggests that his ability to do that arrow there is dependent on my ability to exit out of there. So I have to finish before he can finish. So this is the finish to finish relationship. All right, and then there's one more type of relationship which we hardly ever use. This is the one in green in the bottom corner. It is start to finish. Not really used in project management much, but I can imagine in operations we could use that. So for example, like right now with the hospitals, with Corona, you know, nurses will take shifts, and the second shift, the first shift can't leave until the second shift has shown up because there'll be no nurse or doctors. So the replacement doctor or nurse has to come in. They have to start before the first, shift will finish. So in rotations like that, you will see start to finish. But in construction, we hardly ever see that. All right. So these are the 4 diagramming techniques that we use, or the types of connections or dependencies that you see in PDM, and you need to know them. So anyways, these dependencies that I'm showing you, they're not always going to be enforced. So sometimes it is optional. So for me to paint a wall, yes, the wall has to be there. So I get it. That would be mandatory type relationship. So the relationships sometimes can be mandatory in the sense that, yeah, it can only be done that way. Wall has to be up, the plastering has to be finished before you can paint it. And then there's and then you have optional items, such as this, the discretionary ones. These are the things that you can choose to do it one way or the other. So let me show you. Okay. All right. So mandatory, the wall has to be up before I can paint it. Just clicking the mouse here. And another name for the mandatory would be hard logic. Okay. So they call it hard logic for a reason. You cannot twist it. You cannot change it. It's enforced. You have no choice. It has to be done in the same way. It's mandatory. And then you have the other one, discretionary. Discretionary dependencies. These are also called soft logic in the sense that they are like clay or dough, play dough. You can twist it and turn it as you wish. What would be considered soft logic? Painting the wall and installing the carpet. See, we always would like to paint the wall first and then install the carpet. Why? Because we don't want to drip paint from the wall into the carpet, right? But so we would always wait and we'll say paint the wall first, do the carpet later. But what if we're in a hurry and the lease is finishing from the old headquarters and we have to hand over everything and we have to rush and finish the work? Is there anything that would prevent us from painting the wall and installing carpet at the same time physically? The answer is no, nothing really stops you. It's just that there's a risk that paint will fall from the wall into the carpet. And so what we're doing here, if we really, really want to speed it up, is we fast track these activities. We overlap them, knowing full well that this is going to increase the level of risk. And we take our precautions to make sure that the paint doesn't really drip on the carpet. We cover things, we're more careful. So fast tracking is an option when these dependencies are not hard dependencies. If there are soft dependencies, soft logic, discretionary, we can choose to do them at the same time. I want you to remember the term fast track because it's an exam topic. Okay, fast tracking will be on your exam. You will be asked about it. So you need to know that one. And you need to know that that can only be done on optional relationships, discretionary relationships. All right. There's also the dependencies that we have on the outside or on the inside. This is maybe suppliers. Sometimes we can get the product as expected, and sometimes it's weather conditions. And then you also have the internal dependencies on your management to sign off or other people to provide you information. So these are dependencies. So just because you have two activities that appear to be back to back like this, there is no guarantee that when one of them is finished like this, you expect that these will go in a specific order, and you would expect that the moment this one is complete, that one would also start. There's no guarantee that there would not be a problem that prevents you in the middle here from starting on the next activity. Okay. What if management did not get a certain permit in time? That would prevent the next activity. So just because they look like they're back to back, there's no guarantee that that's actually going to happen. So these are the things that we refer to when we're talking about, internal dependencies, or even, external if we're looking for permits. But internal could be process related. Maybe we didn't process the PO or something that prevented the supplier from maybe sending the product, something like that. So it could be internal or external dependencies that could affect our ability to proceed as planned on the project. Besides this, there are the leads and the lags, and I used an example on the scheduling to show you what the lag does. The lag gives you an enforced waiting period. So I said you start the first coat, we'll wait 1 day. That's a lag of 1 day, and then the second team starts the second coat, and that would be the lag. So you could have a lag that puts a certain amount of time where a successor activity will be delayed with respect to the predecessor activity. Successor afterwards, predecessor before, and there's a time delay that you're putting in there. A lead is the opposite of that, and it's the amount of time a successor activity can be advanced with respect to a predecessor activity. So I have an example listed here, but I want to show you what it looks like in OpenProj, just for the sake of demonstration. Here we have a relationship. Oh, I need to go to the mouse. All right, so here we have a relationship that says finish to finish with a 1-day lag. I want to change this to normal, which is finish to start, which is the common one. And I want to put 3-day lag. So this is what it looks like. Activity A, first activity paint will finish, 3-day lag happens, and then the second activity, which is 5 days, happens. Total, the activities core are 5 and 5, but there's a waiting period of 3 that gives you 13 days total, and you can see it here that that construction is going to take 13 days. Now, if I went and changed it and I said it's finished to start, but we have a minus 2-day lag, that's exactly as like saying you have a 2-day lead, because a negative lag is a lead and a negative lead is a lag. They're quite the opposite. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You can start 2 days before. I put 2 days lead, right? So I know on the chart it doesn't look that way, but you can see that, oh, because there's a weekend in here. So the weekend is playing a role. So I'm just gonna go and change, you know, I can work on the calendar, by the way. I can say this is non-default working time, non-default working time. Now all 7 days are working days. I can even specify the working hours. It's a beautiful tool. So now it looks more realistic when we look at the time here. So I can start 2 days before you finish. That's finished to start, normal back-to-back set of activities with a 2-day lead. If I have only a 1-day lead, then it will be a -1, and that's what it looks like. So then I can start 1 day before you finish. So that's what leads and lags are. Obviously, I've been mentioning, you know, it's good to have a project management information system. So if you do, which the one I'm using now is a project management information system, because I'm using it to track the information of the project, MS Project, likewise, Primavera, all of these. What you're going to get at the end is what we call the project schedule network diagram. This is what you see on the right. It looks like an alien that is invading Earth, and it's just branching out. But, you know, that's what a project schedule network diagram looks like. The only thing that prevents this from being called a schedule is that it doesn't have the dates on it. You notice all the boxes look the same, back to back or sequenced in a certain way. That's what they expect to have happened at this point. All the boxes are ready with the right relationship, and you would have completed the sequencing. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you'll join us on the next segment of this training. If you haven't done so already, please click the like button. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so we will let you know when the next segment is ready. Thank you again. Hope to see you on the next one. I appreciate all the support that you provide with the likes and the subscribes, and we'll see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.